Hello and welcome to the reformerpilates.com podcast. Today I have Korin Nolan. Korin is the founder of Power Pilates UK, co-founder of Dynamic Pilates TV and creator of the Class Plan, a platform that supports fitness professionals with programming and class planning tools. With a background in dance, television and fitness, she has built a strong reputation in the boutique fitness space by evolving traditional Pilates into a more dynamic, results-driven method. Alongside running successful studio and digital businesses, Korin specializes in helping women over 40 navigate changes in their bodies through a combination of Pilates, strength training, and realistic lifestyle strategies. Korin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Awesome. So with your permission, let's get straight into it. And I'd like to begin with this question. So Pilates has traditionally been seen as controlled and rehabilitative. What drove your shift toward a more dynamic, results-focused approach?
I think because I've done Pilates for such a long time, I started when I was 19 at dance college, which is where I was introduced to Pilates for the first time. And when I did it to begin with, I really noticed such a big difference. It was amazing. I could see the physical changes in my body, the strength, my core strength, which really helped my dance, which is what I was obviously doing at the time. And then after qualifying and teaching for many years, I kind of got a little bit stale, I think, and it became a bit too repetitive because don't forget back then, I mean, it's going back a few years ago now, and we didn't have so much inspiration. We didn't have social media. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have YouTube Pilates videos like we do now. And I think I just kind of stuck too much with what I thought I was supposed to be teaching, which was just the more basic traditional exercises. And I just got a little bit stale. And then I found Dynamic Pilates and it was like, wow. I just remember thinking, wow, this is a step up. This I can feel. And then I started to notice changes in my body again. And it was just something about it, the energy. I'm a Gemini. I like change. I like versatility. I don't like to do the same thing time and time again. So for me personally, as a teacher, I need that. And it's just something that really clicked with me and I loved it. And like I say, I got results in my own body. I felt it in my own body again. And it was just something that kind of reignited my passion for Pilates again.
Just on that topic of change, and you mentioned you're a Gemini, but when people say Pilates, changed my body, what do you think is actually happening physiologically? In a well-programmed dynamic class, can you kind of unpack what's actually happening to the physique in that instance?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to think about activating the key muscle groups and main muscle groups, obviously the core, the glutes. And when we've got that initial point of the class at the beginning of the class where we're activating properly, then we're going to be working those key muscle groups so much more efficiently throughout the rest of the class. So I think that first and foremost, you've got to have that initial activation process. Then when we're getting into the actual class, it's about not just going through the motions and doing the exercises, but actually really focusing on those key Pilates principles. So whether you're doing a dynamic class, whether you're doing classical Pilates, contemporary Pilates, whatever you want to call it, really focusing on those key Pilates principles, which we all know, and applying them well, but then also making sure that we're actually doing exercises that layer up a little bit. So rather than just, for example, doing a lunge and doing one exercise on the lower body and then moving on to something else, working towards muscle fatigue a little bit more. So doing 2 or 3 or 4 exercises on one leg before doing something else and then going to the other side, for example. So it's kind of about working to that muscle fatigue approach a little bit more and deeper. And maybe then adding a little bit more load, which is in Dynamic Pilates, we can add weights. We could also obviously add springs and just leveling up the exercise in that way and making the exercises more progressively challenging. But one of the main things is obviously being consistent with it. So you could do one class a week, you could do one class a month, but if you're not doing it on a regular basis, then you're not going to see the change. But that goes for anything, doesn't it? Really, any form of exercise. But for me, it's about that activation and progressively getting stronger and challenging so that you feel like you've come out of a class having really worked your body, not just having had a nice little stretch, I would say.
Yeah. Great. Where do you think the industry still gets it wrong when it comes to programming and that intensity that you're referring to?
Well, I think especially nowadays, because I mean, there's Pilates studios opening left, right, and centre, as we know. There's new teachers being put through the paces and being thrown out there into the industry. And I don't think, I think people kind of tend to look at these pretty Pilates flows. I'm kind of going off the word flow a little bit. I do use it, or I did used to use it more, but I think it's become a different kind of meaning when we talk about a Pilates flow these days. And people are seeing these pretty flows that they see on Instagram and they want to create something similar. So they're just throwing things in with no intention into their class just because they want to do something on a blue spring, they want to do something on a box. So they're going to do whatever kind of works in a sequence to make the class flow, which is good. And I do think it's important for a class to flow, but also the exercise has to have intention. Like, why are we doing it? What is the purpose of the exercise? What are your clients going to get out of that class having done that flow that you've done? Or is it just something that's going to look good on your Instagram? And I think that that's where people get it a little bit wrong in some circumstances. And also, like I spoke about a second ago, I don't think we go for long enough sometimes in exercise. You'll get into something, and this can apply to classical as well, because I went to a classical class not long ago, and we were doing the class, and we did like a few reps, and I was like, okay, this is good, we're getting there. And then we stopped, and then we moved on to something else. And it was like, oh, right, okay, I didn't quite get there. I needed to go for longer. So I think repetition, going for long enough, is things that, and also, and keeping the flow, talking about flow, but keeping the flow going. So moving with a good pace, not so many stop starts to a class, because the more you keep the flow, the more it makes the class dynamic, and therefore you get more out of it. So I think, yeah, people kind of tend to stop a little too quick.
Yeah. And where do you draw the line between that kind of dynamic discipline and the integrity of Pilates? You know, have you ever seen the method kind of pushed too far?
I think we all have, haven't we? Have you seen that thing that they're doing recently on Instagram where I'm going back to Instagram all the time because literally we're on it, aren't we? We're all on it. This is where we all see this crazy stuff as well. Have you seen that, the one where they put their feet in the strap?
Yes.
Do you as well? You know, when they're sitting with their feet in the strap on the platform strap, and then they've got their knees over the foot bar, and then they're sitting back, and I think they've got the straps, and then they pull themselves up. Have you seen that one? That's an example.
I'm not.
Have a
okay.
look. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's
Have
ringing.
but
It's
that's
ringing
just one
some bells.
example. That's just one example. They're sitting back and they're kind of like
Okay.
pulling themselves up using the straps, and then back of the knees are over the top of the foot bar. That's one example of taking it, I would say, a little bit too far. Yeah, I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And I think, to be honest, I'm almost going full circle. I'm almost coming back more to my roots, because I feel like there's just too much of that stuff going on. And not only is it obviously really dangerous, but it's just got nothing to do with Pilates, and it's not helpful. It's not going to get results. It's just there to kind of do something different and be creative. And there's no point in that. The basic exercises are the best, aren't they? Let's be honest. Yes, you can apply props and you can make it more dynamic, and you can make you can do different versions of the classics, but I always think the classics are the best. And just because a class is called dynamic, again, I've kind of like changed my tune on what dynamic, the definition of dynamic Pilates is. And I think a dynamic class really is just keeping the exercises going for long enough, keeping the pace of the class, and adding props maybe to the more classic exercises. Such, you know, you could add weights. For example, I did a stomach massage the other day using some weights as well, just light weights, so nothing that's kind of like over heavy and going to over compromise the exercise, but just adding that little bit of extra complexity to the movement can add variety, can make it more challenging, but we're still sticking with the the basics of that exercise, and we're still getting the most out of them. So I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of it going on at the moment where people are pushing the boundaries and pushing it too far. But I think you've got to remember that the basics are the best, and you can still make a class dynamic and interesting and fun and add variety without being ridiculous at the same time.
Yeah. Thanks, Corinne. I'd like to switch focus now and understand more about your business and going back to the kind of early days when you first launched your studio. What did you intentionally do differently to stand out? In what was probably a crowded fitness market, probably not so much Pilates back then, or certainly not as much as we have today. But what was your kind of intention to really, I suppose, provide something different at that point?
Well, yeah, like you said, it wasn't a crowded fitness market, or well, Pilates market back then. So I always taught in the centre of London, which did have a little bit of dynamic reformer back then. But this is going back 15 years or so. So it wasn't a crowded market back then. It was very new. It was very exciting. People didn't know what it was. And I moved to a place called Beckenham, which is southeast London. And there was a yoga studio there. And I was like, and I'd had enough of working for other people. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to set my own business up. And it was completely new in Beckenham. So it wasn't an overcrowded market. And it came very easily. Everything just flowed. You know, when those things just work and you're like, I did the right thing. This was good. This is a good move. And people were excited by it because they'd never done it before. People started to get results like I did when I first tried it. And so, yeah, I didn't have to try so hard. And I know that sounds really, a bit annoying, because now it's a completely different situation. You know, I was the very first dynamic reformer studio in my area for a long, long time. I'm talking like 8 years or so. And we've been open 12 years now. And in the last, maybe three years, there's been more and more studios that have opened locally. And now I would say there's about 7 local to my area. There's even like a couple on my high street, which, and Beckenham's not a big place. So, it's definitely changed. And now I feel like I've kind of got to change my game and make, I've got competition now. So I feel that competition now more than I did back then when I first opened, which is why we introduced the chairs, actually. One of the reasons why we introduced the chairs to our studios, because it was just dynamic reformer before, and then we brought the chairs in about not even a year ago. Not even a year. We're quite fresh with the chairs, but it has been such a game changer. It's brought something new back to the studio. It's given us life again, and passion back into what we're doing with the teaching, from a teaching perspective, but also the clients. It's like, because we've got a lot of clients, who have been coming from day one. And so for them to have something new and interesting to try, it's just been amazing. And they're all so excited about it. And it's just exciting to do something different. And I think that's been really helpful. Yeah.
Great. As you say, 7 studios in your locality now, and obviously that's a big change from 11 years ago when you started. So there's obviously a lot of new studio owners. What do you think most of those new studio owners underestimate about building a brand and not just a class timetable? And as I ask that question, I know that kind of building a brand is a very kind of broad statement and fairly nebulous, but everybody is kind of invested in it, and I think there's a lot of passion and attention goes into that brand build for studios. So what do you see in terms of new studios potentially underestimating in that regard?
I would say probably the teachers, because the teachers are your business essentially, and if you don't have good teachers, then it doesn't matter how pretty your studio looks. And that is, something that we're seeing some beautiful studios at the moment open, really good aesthetically, but are the classes matching up to that? I don't think, from what I hear, I haven't been to all of them and I can't speak for all of them, obviously, but from what I hear, not all of them are. And I think the teaching is probably one of the biggest downfalls, perhaps. because we've seen a lot of young teachers who are coming through the doors, maybe not that qualified, not that experienced, certainly, and that does show. And I think that it's not only the teaching, it's also the person as well. So you've got to kind of tick a lot of boxes when you look for your teachers, which is one of the reasons why it kind of put me off opening more studios. I did kind of go down that route at one point, thinking I might want to open another studio, but I'm off that now. I moved on. And that was one of the reasons, because I know how difficult it is getting really good teachers. Not only do they have to be good teachers, but they have to be loyal, they have to be personable, they have to be kind of like part of a team. Some teachers don't want to be part of a team. They don't want to, they're like in it for themselves. And all those things, they really matter. Because the clients, they come for you, they come for the teacher. And if they don't have that sense of, they like the teacher, they have that sense of community, it's the teacher who makes the sense of the community at the studio, they're all part of that, a major part of that. And I think that can sometimes go overlooked maybe at the beginning, for some studios, perhaps, I would say.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, you talk about, you know, instructors being the product. When you kind of look back, what decisions that you made had the biggest impact on client retention? Because that's ultimately the lifeblood of any studio. Great to get new customers, new clients through the door, but retention is really the name of the game. I would imagine. And so, what are some of the decisions that you've taken that have had the biggest impact on that specifically?
Well, listen, I'm not going to pretend to be the best studio owner ever, because I've really learned along the way. And when I started, I was pretty rubbish. I'm going to be honest. I mean, in terms of business, I was a good teacher, and I think I provided a good class. And I think I've got the kind of personality that people want to come back to my class. I think that's something that I did have. But in terms of like running a business, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just winging it, to be honest. I didn't send out newsletters every week. I'd send them out whenever I felt like it or remembered to. I did it all because I did everything from scratch myself. So there's definitely been a lot of learning over the years, and we're better with that now. I've got someone who helps me and does all the admin side of things now. And so yeah, we've definitely learned along the way. But in terms of like client retention, I really do think it is about building a community. People want to come to a studio where they feel part of something, where they feel welcome, where, like I say, this is where the teachers really matter, where they enjoy going to see the teacher and feel comfortable speaking to them, telling them about their family, telling them about, it's a bit of a social, isn't it? We get a lot of clients, regular clients, who, come 3, 4, maybe 5 times a week. And they come because they feel part of something. It's like their second home. They feel welcome. So I think creating that environment is really, really important. Maybe doing little events here and there that, really kind of welcome your true core clients back and give them something back and something to look forward to. Putting on summer drinks, winter drinks, those kind of things. I think just, make a good community, and I think are really important to do for a studio.
Yeah, nice. Well, I want to kind of switch again, kind of directions now, in terms of kind of what changed in your mindset when you went from serving, a studio and a community, as you referenced, to a digital audience, right? That's quite a shift. A lot of people, I think, aspire to do that, want to do that. It's perhaps looks easier than it is. But would love to know what changed in your mindset to go from, tangible real life studio to that kind of digital audience.
Well, I think in my mindset, as I said at the beginning, I'm a Gemini. I like to have variety in my life. And also I did a little bit of presenting back in the day, which we've spoken about. And I think I wanted to do something more along those lines. And I just wanted to do something different. And at the time, we launched Dynamic Pilates TV just before, about a year before lockdown, luckily, thankfully. So we were already set up when lockdown happened. But at that time, there wasn't really much in terms of online platforms. There was Pilates Anytime, from what I knew, and I think that's about all there was. And I remember looking at Pilates Anytime, and I know it's changed recently because I know there's more dynamic classes on there, but it was very classical. It was very safe. It was very tame, and it wasn't for me. And I was like, we need to introduce dynamic reformer Pilates or just dynamic Pilates to an online platform. We need to, I need to do this. And then I met Tiffany, who's my business partner, who's in Utah, who basically is just the same as me, but in Utah with her family, with her Mormon family. And yeah, and we met through Instagram actually. And she came to London, not with the intention of doing Dynamic Pilates TV, but just she had a trip to London and we met up. We did a class in town and I said, I've got this idea. And she went, that's really funny. I was thinking about doing something together. And we ended up doing Dynamic Pilates TV together. So that was kind of like my shift towards, just providing something that wasn't currently there at the time. But then now there is lots of it.
Great timing though, just before COVID, just before lockdown. That's great. And I hear that so often about it's, there's a kind of a people moment. There's a kind of serendipity of meeting somebody else, which kind of sparks the magic of starting a new business, I suppose. Staying on that topic of online fitness, a lot of people, myself, consume fitness content online, but they don't always stay consistent. What do you think separates platforms that actually get results and those that do not? So those that are just try it a little, once or twice, and those that remain really consistent in people's habits. What do you think is the difference between those?
Well, I think you've got to find a platform that really resonates with you, and you've got to, again, find trainers that you want to train with, even if you're working out at home. So you've got to have those personable characters and people that make you want to switch on your laptop and do the workout at home. Yeah, I think people can kind of dip in and out of online fitness like I did. I, like most people, started working out at home during lockdown, and I kept it up for a good few years. And for me, it just worked. And there's something about online fitness, isn't there, where it's just easy. You can get up, you can work out in your pajamas if you want to, then you can go and have your shower. It just makes your day and your workout time a lot more productive and quicker. So I think it's really good for that. And I think if you've got a teacher online or a platform online with teachers that you regularly use because you like them and you like their style and you're getting a good workout and all of the things just work, then great. But yeah, I think it just comes down to getting the right classes online. So like if you're going to have a platform, then it's got to be a variety of styles that you offer perhaps, so people can get a little bit of everything from it. So if you are a Pilates platform like we are, we don't just offer reformer Pilates, we also offer mat Pilates, obviously, but we offer shred training a little bit in there as well, because that is very important and it's something that women need, and men as well. Obviously, we all need a variety of workouts. So I think if you're offering everything on one platform, then people have less reason to go elsewhere, I guess.
Yeah. So staying on that topic, sounds to me like what you're saying is, it's not exclusive, right? You can have both kind of studio experiences as well as kind of supplementing that with online, or the other way around. But do you think online fitness can truly replace the studio experience, or is that something that can never be replicated?
I hope not. I hope not, because I think there's nothing like having, like I said earlier, being corrected in Pilates classes. That is a fundamental part of what Pilates is about. Working on technique and all of those things, those detailed things, comes with a teacher helping you do that and achieve that. So I think from that point of view, I hope it's not going to completely replace it. And also, I think people need human interaction and the social side. We talked about the community. Yes, you can get community to a certain degree on an online platform, but I think that in-person connection, I don't think you can ever replace, can you, completely with online? Yeah. But I think a mix is the perfect balance.
Great. And then kind of direct question to you. If you were starting today, would you build physical first or digital first, and why?
I know it's really difficult because No, I absolutely would not start another reformer Pilates studio now at the moment because it's completely saturated market, and I just don't see the point in joining and adding to that. And so I would definitely think about, I suppose, online, but I do like having my studio. And my studio is where I film all my classes, obviously. So it's a really hard one, that. But I think I'd probably go online. The great thing about having social platforms is that you can build an audience literally from home or wherever you are. And if you grow that first and you find that you do have that connection and you do it well, then there's no reason why you can't take that community to an online platform and do a good job. So yeah, I would probably this day and age start
Yeah,
online.
got it. Thank you. Um, so moving on to a different topic now, I suppose within that, and thinking about kind of health, specifically kind of women's health, around 40 and over. And you've been clear that Pilates alone is not always enough, for women over 40. What is missing, and why does it matter so much? So I suppose the question is, why is Pilates on its own not enough?
Okay, so we all know that as we get older, we lose muscle mass, we lose bone density. And if you've not heard that, I think, you must have been living in a cave because we are constantly being
Yeah,
fed that information, right? And it's about not only preserving muscle mass, but also growing muscle mass. And those things are really hard to do post 40. Um, so it's about, can Pilates, reformer Pilates, can that do that? And I would say yes, to a certain degree, but let's think about it. It depends on where you start. So if you're someone who's quite new to fitness and you go to a reformer Pilates class, which obviously we've got springs, we've got resistance with a reformer machine. Even with mat work Pilates, you've got your body weight, but there's only so much spring load you can add to a reformer without it being dangerous, as we discussed earlier. You can add weights, yes, but you can only add light weights to a reformer. You can't use massive heavy weights. So yes, if you're someone who's just starting out and you're more of a beginner, then yes, you can build muscle mass. But then there's a limit, there's a stop point where you kind of need to then progress and go further. Like I say, you can't just keep adding springs on a reformer. You can't add heavier and heavier and heavier weights on a reformer. And I think there's a lot of, because there's a big debate, isn't there, as well, on Instagram and everywhere on socials about is reformer, it's like Pilates versus strength training, which is better. And I don't think it's which is better. They both serve very different purposes, and the two combined is like the perfect marriage. And a few steps in there as well, which we can talk about later. So I don't think it's necessarily choosing between them. It's about doing the two, because Pilates is like your foundations. It's a different kind of strength building. So, and I think that's another confusion as well. We think about strength. Well, yeah, you can build strength doing Pilates. Of course you can build strength doing Pilates. Of course you can. You can get amazing core strength. That's what Pilates is all about. But that is not building muscle mass. Muscle mass is a different thing. And that's what we need post 40 to maintain and to grow muscle mass becomes quite difficult, because obviously our hormones change and we need to progressively overload and challenge. We need a bigger stimulus. So the bigger stimulus comes with lifting heavier weights, and that we simply can't achieve on a reformer machine or on a mat. With Pilates, we can achieve a great deal. We can support our skeletal frame. We can build core strength. We can support all those deep integral muscles that we need to work, and we can work our flexibility and all of those great things, which are very, very important, and like the foundations almost to then going on to do the strength work, which is where you're lifting heavy weights. And so you don't get injuries and things like that. If you're doing Pilates as well, you're less likely to injure yourself when it comes to picking up those heavier loads. So that's why the two work really well together. But in terms of building muscle mass, you need to lift the heavier weights. And that's why it's so important, especially for women over 40. There's actually some new information coming out about whether we can build muscle mass with smaller weights and do higher repetitions. And it's been said apparently, and I've not really looked into it too much, that you can build just as muscle mass just as well using lighter weights, doing higher reps. Now, I do agree with that to a certain degree, but again, I think there is definitely a limit. And also just seeing it in my own body, I know that I've seen physical changes past the age of 40 by lifting heavy weights. And it's not the same as lifting lighter weights and using lighter weights on a reformer machine. That's more muscle endurance and a different kind of strength, which we talked about earlier. So I think there's a little bit confusion, but ultimately we need the two, and we need to get our steps in as well. We need to walk regularly. I think a lot of people tend to just do their workout. I think, oh, well, I'm done for the day now. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to sit at a desk and I'm going to do my work. You need to keep moving. You need to keep moving. You need to keep walking. And I've noticed in my own body as well that when I don't walk and I don't get and it's not just 10,000 steps. I think it's more 12 to 15,000 steps a day, which is hard work when you've got a job, trying to get that amount in. But you need to keep more active throughout the day, as well on top of your workout.
Yeah. So we're probably touching on this already, but when it comes to, what are the biggest kind of training mistakes you see women making as their hormones shift? Is it not, would you kind of compartmentalize it there? It's kind of not lifting heavy enough and steps. Would you say they're the kind of the biggest mistakes that they make? Are there any others?
Yeah, I think women think that they need to do cardio, don't they? So they're running and doing these long endurance activities like, I don't know, step aerobics and things like that, which is just kind of like burning them out and raising the cortisol levels, which is a complete no-no when it comes to over 40. We want to think about bringing your cortisol levels down, being calmer and doing something that isn't going to spike your cortisol levels so much. And running, I think, is one of those things that is probably the worst thing that a woman can do over 40. And I'm not saying it's the worst thing. I think any form of exercise, I think if you're moving, then that's a great thing. I don't want to demonize any kind of fitness. If you enjoy running and that's what you love doing, do it, But for me, I know personally, when I do those kind of activities and when I do HIIT for too long, I think short bursts of HIIT are good. But if I do high intensity workouts for a long period of time, I don't feel good. I can literally feel it in my body that is not doing me good. I'm starving. I end up eating more, binging on food. My sleep's terrible. I've not done it for years in all honesty, but I remember that feeling and I know it just doesn't work for me. And I know it doesn't work for a lot of women. And you're not building, that's counterproductive to building muscle mass as well, isn't it? Like I know, a lot of people on the jabs and things like that these days as well, which is also losing muscle mass. And then they're going for runs as well. I was speaking to a friend at the weekend and she was in the same thing. And I was like, I want to tell you, but I don't want to hurt your feelings and tell you you're doing the wrong thing. But it's true. I think we've kind of got to work on preserving our muscle mass, and doing the wrong thing is really detrimental.
Yeah. So if there is resistance, so why do you think women, or I don't know if it's many or fewer these days, but why do you think, any women would resist adding strength or intensity at this stage? What do you think is kind of holding them back?
Maybe because they think it's going to be too hard work. Maybe because it's a bit intimidating going into a gym and not knowing what you're doing. Because let's face it, unless you go in and you've got a personal trainer helping you on all those big old machines, they are quite intimidating, and you don't know what load to add. You don't know where to start. You don't know how to perform the exercise properly. I think it's really important if you're going to go into a gym environment, that you start with a personal trainer at least. And then I also think a lot of people make the mistake of just going in and winging it and just doing a little bit of everything and then working on the cardio machines too much. Whereas you need an actual plan. You need a plan that you stick to on a regular basis. I did a program actually on Dynamic Pilates TV called the Power Program, exactly for that reason. And I did it all on the mat with heavy weights, because it's, you know, you can do it at home. It's less intimidating than going into a gym and picking up dumbbells. You don't actually need to use the big machines to get started. You can just use dumbbells and then get heavier as you get stronger. But I think not having a plan is a big mistake that people make quite often, and not sticking to, you know, like doing your lower body twice a week, doing your upper body maybe once a week, or maybe a little bit more if you can, but it depends what else you're doing. And if you've got your Pilates in there as well, then that's, like I say, the perfect marriage. But yeah, I think that's probably a reason that women are put off by going to gyms, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to do it. So I think having a good program, a good plan is absolutely key. And that's what gets results, not just winging it.
Yeah. So I suppose the other critical component of this is, is nutrition as well. So kind of turning to that now. Again, still saying, looking at that that demographic that you understand, which is busy women juggling work and family and training. What are some of the non-negotiable habits that really make the biggest difference when it comes to nutrition?
For food, okay. Well, obviously, again, we know that we need to eat protein. We should be eating around, I think it's like 1.7 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is, I eat around 120 grams a day, but I'm 5'10". So yeah, kind of around that point, you want to be eating on you want to be making sure that you're staggering it across the day. I think a lot of women make the mistake of eating too fewer calories, and on a whole, actually, I think they kind of like try and cut back on calories and just eat too little, and then they wonder why they cave in and they give up so quickly, why they binge eat in the evening, because they've not eaten enough during the day. So you need to be spreading that amount of food throughout the day and making sure that you are fueling mainly around your workouts, actually, and not cutting things out like carbohydrates. I used to do the whole no carbs before marbs kind of thing. I've stopped doing that now, because I know I need carbohydrates, and it's really important, especially if you're lifting heavy weights and you are doing any kind of fitness. You need to eat carbohydrates, and to cut that group out is you're doing your body a disservice. But what I don't do is I don't eat loads of carbohydrates in the evening. So I'll eat them around my my workout first thing in the morning. I've just had my sourdough with some almond butter and a little bit of jam, and then I'm probably going to have something. I'll do my workout, then I'll probably have something after with my carbohydrates in and my protein, obviously, as well. But in the evening, which is when we're sat down, most likely, we're less, most often people aren't busy in the evening. So it's when you're sat down more, not burning as many calories. So you don't need as many calories. So it makes sense to eat less in the evening. And I'll eat, like some protein and some vegetables or salad. So it's just lighter. Whereas I think a lot of people tend to do the opposite. And I think that's one big mistake that people often make. Yeah. And I think, trying to kind of stick to 1,500 calories a day, which seems to be like the magic number, which people have been told and misinformed about, that you need to eat those fewer calories to lose weight. Whereas in fact, you need to fuel your body properly, and you can afford to eat more than that if you're training right, in the right way. And it's important to do that, because we're talking about muscle mass and gaining muscle mass. You have to fuel your body properly and with enough calories in order to do that.
Yeah. So if someone was looking to, like, three things in their lifestyle, right? And you've got sleep, food, and movement, what would you tell them? Where would you tell them to start, and why? Of those kind of three things, what would you prioritize?
Wow. I would say sleep, because if you've had a bad night's sleep, you're going to be hungrier. That hormone, ghrelin, is it called? I think it's ghrelin, isn't it? Where your tired hormone kicks in, and then it makes you want to eat more.
Yeah.
So naturally, just in your cortisol's higher and all of those things that we don't want. So sleep is the first thing that you need to sort out. However, I've never been the best at sleep, so I can't say that I'm kind of an expert in that area, but I do try to do, certain little things that help me sleep better. Like I'll take my magnesium in the evening. I'll try and kind of reduce stress a little bit in the evenings, and maybe not watch TV in my bedroom and things as much as possible. So things like that, and trying to, like, if I wake up in the middle of the night, which I have been known to do, I'll try to avoid looking at my phone and those kind of things, and just try and just stay with it and sleep. If you can sort that out, I think that's the biggest factor. And I know a lot of women suffer with sleep,
Yeah.
especially as they get older, because they have, like I said, that 3 a.m. kind of wake up call where their
Yeah.
cortisol spikes and they wake up, and then everything spirals, doesn't it, and goes downhill the day after. So yeah, I'd say that's the most
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I heard Chris Williamson on the Modern Wisdom podcast say, it was a while ago now, that in terms of sleep, it really is the pebble at the start of the avalanche in terms of everything else that you're trying to manage in your life. And if you address that first, then yes, as you rightly say, you're going to eat better the next day because you feel like you can eat proper. That means you can work out better, etc. So it's I agree with you. That's why I wear one of these things to kind of track sleep and all that kind of stuff. Korin, this has been a great conversation. I just have one final question, which I asked everybody that comes on the podcast, which is, what has given you unbridled joy in the last week? It doesn't have to be the week. It could be the last 10 days or whatever period of time. But we'd just love to know what's given you unbridled joy.
Well, I recently found out that I'm going to be a grandmother, and that has kind of brought me a lot of joy. I mean,
Congratulations.
it's freaked me out a little bit because I'm only 47, but I had my oldest boy when I was 18, Liam, and he's he's going to be 29 actually this month. So he's having a baby. So there's going to be a new baby that's coming into our lives, and so I'm very, very happy and pleased about that. And yeah, hopefully I can pass on my we're quite a fitness family, so hopefully we can pass that on to our new little one.
Amazing. Well, that is a real that's a true unbridled joy moment and a real blessing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. I'm sure baby will come out moving and doing all the kind of classical movements before they know. But Korin, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you and hear about your journey and all those kind of priorities around diet, around lifting heavy, and living the kind of life that we all aspire to. And hats off with all the kind of plates you're spinning with your digital businesses and your studio. And wish you all the best for some exciting times ahead, clearly. And thanks again for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.